Welcome to this chaos. You might know this feeling where you've written a bunch of cool lore for your D&D players, and then you realize no one actually likes reading. That's why I'm gonna make the coolest DM screen my players have ever seen. So, I've been doing a lot of brainstorming in my non-camera time. I made a bunch of sketches. I asked Rick Perry, who makes all the Dimension 20 DM screens, for a bit of advice. He was saying it's basically like a poster for the scope of the campaign, should represent the whole scope, but also not spoil anything. It's important that the players can still see you and that you can reach over it, but it's also a nice frame for like camera angles or just player angles. Basically anything I make is set in the Hazelands. And after many questions and many requests, I've started writing a book. A setting guide, which includes a campaign and a bunch of stories, a bunch of homebrew stuff, which will enable you to play your adventures in the Hazelands. You can pick out specific things that you like from it and put it in your own campaign, or you can just play the whole thing with all of the subclasses and all of the cool spells and items. It's not finished, but I'm hoping it's coming out at the end of this year. I'm gonna be sharing some playtesting material and some teasers on my Patreon. Most of it will be for free, so go check it out over there. My amazing friend Ems has been making extremely beautiful illustrations, which I cannot wait to share, so I'm not gonna wait, and I'm gonna probably show them somewhere over here. So as I'm gonna be doing a lot of playtesting, I need a DM screen that brings the players into the world immediately. So I bought these thin pieces of cardboard, and my first idea was to make the base out of cardboard. Now I'm realizing that might actually not be the best idea. Instead, I just cut my pieces out of architectural foam. Because if I'm already working with foam, why not use foam all the way? It's quite high, but I usually stand up while DMing. And I had a really cool idea. Oh my god, perfect. I bought some magnet paint, and I thought it might be cool to paint the side that's to me in magnet paint. Okay, so I've tried out a little piece, and I found this magnet that we have. I haven't tried if it actually works. Okay, not strong. I got excited for a second. It is magnetic. It does work, but I think I'll probably need 2-3 layers probably to have it hold properly and have it hold papers as well. But it works and it looks great and it's pretty sturdy, so it'll make my DM screen a lot stronger. Perfect. Oh my god, I'm excited.
This might have not been the best option, but it was certainly very fast. I cut the foam board at an angle and then just taped it with some paper tape. I measured out the angles on a bigger piece of foam so I could start cutting out the base, but I needed the right tool for the job.
So because I'm making such a foam intensive project, I reached out to Shifting Lands and asked them if they could provide me with some things that might be helpful. And to my surprise, they sent me a bunch of stuff. A tool like this is just extremely useful, but let me put everything together.
Shifting Lands sent me a bunch of stuff. It's all foam cutting tools that are compatible with a Proxon foam cutter. Of course, you don't need any of these tools, but it did save me hours of time and frustration. Especially the guiding tool and the circle cutter were a lifesaver. It was just the most satisfying thing to plop a block of foam in there and cut some towers. I looked a lot at castles before cutting up the foam. I visited my local castle, the Gravestein, and that's where I noticed these slanted battlements, which I tried to copy with the foam.
Made these that look extremely cute, but I would like to have a kind of round tower in the middle. It has space to put something on because I think it'd be cute to be able to put a mini on the wall. And that needs to come here, and then I'd like to have like 2 little towers at the sides, so I'm afraid I'll have to cut this up and we'll have a nice looking castle. I cut out a bunch of these round circles for the smaller tower. They're pretty even, but I think it'd be fun to make them crooked on purpose, so I'll arrange them a bit strangely and then we'll smooth them over later with that stuff.
The round tower is inspired by these ones at the Gravesteen. I stood on top of them and I just thought it would be really fun for my miniatures to have a cool lookout point. So yeah, reference pictures important, but actually visiting your local castle, even more fun. You can just really get into the details and look at every nook and cranny to see what it looks like up close. Now for the gate.
Okay, it looks pretty good. Look at what we've got. Is it too tall? Maybe. It's funny how I always ask the advice of professionals who know what they're doing and then ignore exactly that point of advice. This is looking pretty cute, but I want it a lot more detailed. But let's do a little test first. Beep. This works great as a little platform to put some minis. There's also the hole. What I was imagining. Damn it. Something a little bit cooler is I could open the little doors and then like push a little monster through. But this monster is too big. Before you click away, we're doing some building. This needs to be big and lush. And I made these little thingies which make the angle. So let's not cut to me failing. It's drying. I don't know how long it takes actually, but probably ages. Apparently it's extremely flammable, so I'm gonna put it a bit further away from my fire and then continue another day. I think we might have a slight problem. It's fixed to the table. That's why I never call this tutorials. Half of these videos are what not to do. I'm sure I can get it off. Yeah. It's coming off. Oh my god. It's pretty stuck. I said I didn't need it to be super movable, but I did expect to be able to move it from the table. I'm just lifting the table. What the hell happened? Oh no, one of the towers came off. I don't like that sound. I had like little bits that dried on the table and they weren't too stuck, so I was like, oh, that means I can take it off easily. But if it's such a big chunk, of course that's not possible. Yay! Let's say I'm making these mistakes so you don't have to make them. Whee! Okay, so I added a little bit more foam that needs to dry. I'm just gonna work on making little things to put on the hills. This is where we are at the moment. I did a little draw over and I realized I want a lot more bulk to work with. So once again, we're gonna use the foam, but be extra careful this time. Oh wait, we have a visitor. Oh my god! Yes, he's sniffing. You cannot see what's behind me because of the darkness, but let me say, the foam has expanded, but I'm waiting for it to be absolutely dry so I can carve smooth hills into it. So this is my drawer. As you can see on my drawer, I want to have loads of towers and houses just stacked up in the middle, and then they get smaller when it goes further away. And I also want some mountains. So yeah, let's just cut up some foam and see what we get. It's big. Okay, no, don't do that, it'll break. The next step is cut it down until it fits in my car and until we have 3 layers of hills, and then we'll fill everything with a paper clay mix that I'm gonna make myself. And then there's so many more things to do. So I've got a bunch of gaps to fill and smooth things out. I don't want to spend a fortune on clay or whatever material. So I've already ripped up a bunch of toilet paper. I got myself a bag. This was like €6 for like 4 kilos of plaster. I've already done a little test and it was kind of brittle. So I'm gonna try to add some PVA glue and see if that kind of strengthens the whole mixture. It's important to first mix the plaster with the water before adding the toilet paper, so it's already like a nice scoop, and then we'll add the PVA later. There's really ideal measurements, but I don't know, measuring is boring.
This is definitely what took me the longest. I made so many batches of toilet paper plaster mix. I improved the mixture every time. Sometimes I made it worse, but most of the time I made it better. It's definitely key that you mix the water and the plaster before adding the toilet paper. That makes it a lot smoother. I definitely recommend using this mix if you have to cover large surfaces. And with some extra water, I could get it really smooth. I picked out a quick dry plaster as well, which made it dry very quickly.
It's finally fully covered with toilet paper. It's gotten a lot heavier because I ended up using about 2 kilos of plaster. So we're basically a month in now. This has been a lot more work than I thought, but then again, I always think something will take a day when it actually takes a week. It still looks like a cake to me. I still feel like at the end of the video I'm gonna do a big reveal where I slice into it and it just turns out to be a cake. Right now I've been stalling a little bit because I need to make all the tower roofs, which are a lot, and I'm trying to figure out in my head which is the fast way, and I think I figured out there is no fast way, and I just have to start doing it. So I hope you will enjoy me struggling to make 15,000 tower roofs. I started this project in February. Right now it's, wait, what month? I've lost track of time. It's May. Hopefully the video is coming out this month. Only a few days ago, I thought I lost all of the footage that I had filmed up to now.
It's it's all gone. All of it's gone. Bye-bye. Woo, see ya.
Good news. I found the footage again. Sometimes a big project really overwhelms me and then I don't do anything because I don't know what the next step is. So we're gonna make a little list of small steps that need to be done. So when I am a bit lost on what to do, I can just look at my little paper and just take the next thing off the list.
Number 1, I ran out of air dry clay, so the first thing on the list is to finish the tower roofs. Number 2 is to paint and spray a base layer. Then for number 3, we gotta make a door over here. And lastly, I look like I'm seasoning the DM screen, but that's basically what flocking is.
Tiny tutorial time. The quickest way I found with making towers this size is use a toothpick and kind of prod it in there. And just take a blob of air dry clay, kind of prepare it to be a little bit the right shape. I use a lot of water to smooth it out and then just put it on there. And I kind of make this shape to make 4 angles and shape it like this. Create like a somewhat 4 angled roof. And then you can give it your weird curly twists.
To make the door, I started with a little draw over. I looked up some inspiration online for different medieval doors and also thought of what would be doable with the materials that I had and also the skills I have. Because I used the door templates to cut the hole, I could use the same one to cut a door out of cardboard. I thought long and hard about which techniques I could use for the door mechanism, just to make it open and close in a nice way. I've done some bookbinding in the past and those techniques seemed really transferable to this. So I cut out some pieces that would be stuck to the board and those would be connected as hinges to the doors itself. Once I was confident it would work, I glued everything together. I used Mod Podge because that was as close to bookbinding glue I had, but I think any white glue would probably do the trick. I could probably have made the back look a little bit nicer, but no one needs to see what's behind the DM screen anyway. Now the glue has dried and it's time to decorate the door. These are some small planks that I found in the arts and crafts shop and I just thought they were the perfect width. I cut them up with some clippers and weathered them using a hobby knife. I rounded the sides and drew in some grain, which will show up really nicely when dry brushed. I also have this 3D sticker sheet and I thought this flowery sticker would look cute as handles. For the hinge details, I mixed up some green stuff and milliput combination and used a little water to make it stick to the wood. That was still a bit of a struggle. I don't know if there is a better way to do this. The dentistry tools I have and a tiny bowl sculpting tool were a great help though. I really wanted to emulate these type of curls and keep it somewhat consistent all the way through, but after the first one turned out quite well, I felt confident I could do the rest somewhat similarly. I rolled up a bunch of tiny milliput balls, which I could then later stick on with super glue. The last bit I didn't use up, I made into an improvised texturing tool that I pressed some faces into, hoping it will look cool. We'll have to see when it cures. And then I got to put the doors in and see how it looks.
I want to protect the foam before I spray paint it. I would also like to add a little bit of texture. So I'm gonna make a light pludge.
Okay, I have no idea what pludge is, but that seemed the right name for what I wanted. It's basically acrylic paint and some very fine sand, chinchilla sand in this case. I mixed up some castle-y colors and then added a little bit of Mod Podge as a sealant. I'm honestly not sure if it's necessary, but it seemed appropriate. The texture was actually a horrible experience to paint, but it looks even better with a wash and a dry brush. The rest of the towers I kept unpainted because I wanted to keep the drawn-on detail and try out a spray.
Got this Army Painter terrain spray, which is meant for XPS foam. I have tried it out and it didn't make any weird stuff on my foam. Something might still go wrong, but let's give it a proper go.
Nothing went wrong. Usually spray paint eats at the foam, but this spray paint left a really nice smooth layer that I can then spray over with the nice color of a more evil spray. A normal spray, I guess. I have a green, a tan, and a greyish blue that I use in all my Hazelands terrain to keep the vibe and the color scheme somewhat consistent. While that dried, I painted up the back with magnetic paint. It's very gloopy, but quite easy to apply, and as it was a sunny day, it almost dried instantly, which made it really easy to keep applying more and more layers. I ended up doing about 3 or 4 layers and then tested with a magnet and applied where it was not as magnetic as I would want to. Then it was ready for the next step.
Okay, so we got our base coat and we got our door, which I'm gonna glue to it now. Oh my god, it's gonna look so cool. So the next step is finishing all the painting. But that's for tomorrow. Whoosh. Oh no, I'm gonna glue this first. It's painting day. I was looking back at the drawings, it might not be full enough. It's a bit too late to add more stuff. I did want to add maybe some cool rocks. I've sculpted these before and they took me quite a while. I'm gonna try to make some molds out of them and press some rocks. We got a cup of water and some blue stuff. The water is very hot.
You basically boil some water, drop the blue putty in there for 3 minutes until it's soft enough to knead, and then when it's soft I press my rock in there to make the mold. When it's cool enough the mold holds its shape, and then I could just put some milliput in there and wait for it to cure. Because curing takes a little bit of time and I still had loads of milliput, I ended up sculpting a bunch of rocks by hand anyway. But I want to have a lot of different sizes to highlight the forest perspective on the hills, so I made the tiniest rocks. When the milliput was cured enough, I got it out of the mold, and it actually looks quite nice. Now, time to paint. It's funny how suddenly it's starting to look like something. I'm imagining all the little knights and wizards and ladies living in the towers, constantly squabbling. The Hazelands has a constantly changing layout with walking towers and running rivers, and it's both bustling and desolate, so I hope I have those two aspects represented on the whole DM screen.
I know it's quite a chaotic paint job, that's just how I work. The acrylic paint is cheap, but it doesn't cover as well. So for the towers, because it's smaller surfaces, I'm going to use miniature paint. You just have to use a lot less of it because it's got a lot better coverage. It would be kind of a waste of good paints to cover the whole thing with fancy miniature paints. But just for small parts, I think it's appropriate.
I somewhat regret not adding shingles on all of the roofs because it just looks great with a dark blue base layer and a light blue dry brush, but that would have taken me years to do. And this video needs to come out at some point. Once I did the base layer, I was a bit unsure if it would turn out well because it looked very cartoony, but washes to the rescue. After using some dark brown washes and fading them with my finger, it was looking a lot more grubby and medieval. Then I suddenly had the idea of adding paths and roads. The hills ended up looking a lot more flat than in my original drawing, but I think now it has that weird medieval perspective, which reminds me of an old map. The Hazelands itself doesn't have a proper map. I think of it more as a place where you have to ask for directions and get around going from landmark to landmark. My friend Ems is working on a map for the Hazelands though, because maps are cool, but the description I gave her was this landmark description where it's like, you're standing at the well, and then you will see some hopping towers, and from there you can see the weird toad house.
I'm done painting. It's actually looking good now. I definitely had my doubts at numerous points. It's looking somewhat exactly like my drawing, which is the first time I've ever managed to do that. But for it to look exactly like my drawing, it needs some fluff. I prepared a whole bunch of fluff. I hope it's enough. We'll discover now.
For those watching who are first-time flockers, I apply PVA to every part I want lush and grassy. PVA dries very slowly, so I had time to slather really big parts and flock it in one go. The vertical parts of the terrain were quite hard to cover, even after risking everything and tipping it over. In the end, I painted the barren places like rocks, and it kind of made more sense that way. Lastly, I added some clumpy flock as a forest in the distance. In the middle parts, I used it as shrubbery, and on the castles and towers, I put a bunch of smaller flock as moss growing in between the cracks.
There's someone with a machine outside, which is very loud. Try to ignore that if you can hear it. This river, it doesn't really look like a river. I might have done it a little bit too impulsively and it just looks like a blue streak. So we're gonna make it look like an actual river. I'm really nervous to do it. But, well, we didn't think while drawing it, so we're not gonna think while finishing it. It's Silicone time. Someone came up to me at Salute to tell me that they used this and it was very stinky, and that I hadn't warned them that it's stinky. So I'll put up a stinkiness warning if I use any strange products. Mine isn't too stinky though, so it might be a different type, but let's do this. In my drawing, I also drew some clouds here. So I'm gonna take some of this teddy bear stuff and kind of build some clouds. It's the Hazelands after all.
I built up the clouds using a needle felting technique. You can punch it into the foam as well, which makes it permanently attached to the terrain. But watch out for your fingers though. Then as the last step, I painted the rocks that I sculpted earlier and glued them along the path.
Oh my god, I can't believe it's finished. I feel like I could keep adding things to it, and I might, based on how the book and the stories develop. We've already got some little details, like the snail market here, and we've got the faraway mountains. We've got some of our standing stones, we've got our wishing well, but there's so much more I could add. On my wish list, for example, is to add some banners that I can hang from the battlements. But all in all, I'm really happy with how this went. I learned loads, and I hope that you didn't pick up too many bad ideas. Of course, before I forget, I really wanted to show off. Whee! Can I retrieve it? I can't retrieve it. I feel very powerful standing behind this. If you want to know more about the Hazelands and maybe playtesting material or more things that are coming, then you can follow me on Patreon, Instagram, and I guess here as well. Let me know which things you would add to this terrain DM screen, and I will see you in the next video.